for those people who maybe have work or other things, or another class meeting or something. So I'm going to bring up, and this might not be news to some people, and it might be really valuable to others. And that's often how it goes with these sorts of things. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Oh yeah, sorry. First of all, let's see. That's not the right screen, is it? What am I sharing? There it is. All right. So first of all, I guess I should introduce myself. Hi, my name is Mike Fox. I'm not a CPA. A lot of the teachers for these courses are. I'm an accounting professor at another college, so I'm a full-time teacher. And I just picked up these BYU courses on the side. I love a lot of the things BYU Idaho does. But so far, the way this course design is, I'm not loving it, but I think we'll work the kinks out and it'll be pretty good. What I do love is that the extent and reach of this program. We have students in my classes that are, I mean, from all over the world, people that probably would not have access to this level of education if BYU Idaho wasn't doing what they're doing, especially at the cost they do it at. So that's one of the things I love is this recognition. Our college president at Eastern Arizona College, where I work full time, he used to always say that education is the greatest secular endeavor that people can be involved in. I guess that's debatable, but I always took issue with the fact that I don't think it's a secular endeavor. I think anything we're doing to learn is making us more fit to serve in the Lord's kingdom, and certainly that's knowledge is the thing we can take with us. We can't take our money or our house, but the things we've learned will move with us. And so anyway, so that's a little about me. I read through and responded to several of your introductions. I don't know if we want to use up time for that here or just move into a couple things. And so I think we'll move into it. If somebody's like, no, I want to introduce myself to the class, then let me know and I will give you the floor. Most people hate that part of the first class. Anyway, so I'm showing you, I'm on the course homepage. But one of the things I've had a few students say, man, I don't feel like the book for this course is really doing much for me. And so I think it's a decent book. And so I wanted to show a couple features in the book that I think are valuable, that students might be missing. So let's see, if I go to library and then I go to the ebook. And then come up here to the chapter contents. So at the end of each chapter, so for example, chapter 1, which we are just working on, they have this thing that they call, where are you at? It's called the Need to Know Comprehensive. And I think it's pretty super awesome as far as it gives you a comprehensive problem that reviews all of the concepts from the chapter, and it gives you video explanations of each one. And then it also gives you a solution. And so, as far as from a review perspective, I wish I'd had this in my accounting book when I was in school, the way that it breaks all that down. So that's one tool that I really wanted to make sure people were aware of. And then, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but if you haven't done accounting before, it can feel like it's a foreign language almost. Like there's all these new terms you've never heard of. And so they also have like a key terms section at the back, which is really good. And like I recognize that everybody's time is limited, right? Like sometimes you're doing the best you can just to get through all the material in the module and then get the homework done. But other times, for me, if I'm stuck on something, I can go figure out what is this term I'm not understanding. Just to know that resource is right there is very helpful. And then one last thing is there's what's called a quick study at the end, which has, again, some little things to work through if you need additional practice. There's other materials, but I really feel like that comprehensive and the key terms are really valuable tools. that I just wanted to point out that are there, especially the comprehensive, because it has all the video to go with it. So in addition to that, and there's not much there yet, but like previously when we were using the old textbook, I had just pages of links to things that I had put together over the years. And so now I'm slowly building that again for this course. And so I'm gonna, I've been so overwhelmed with trying to deal with these issues with the quiz access assignment and then the quiz that I have not put together as many other resources for you as I would like to. And so that's just, again, I think as people get more comfortable with navigating the course, that'll free up some of my time to put together additional resources for you. Let me see. So I'm in. So when I put out the weekly announcement, I include in it kind of a list of everything and when it's due, but then this little link that says additional study content. There's a link there. And right now, all I have in there is one little overview I did for chapters 1 and 12. I'm going to do one for you tonight, and I'll record that so that I can share that with other people. I also I intend to maybe put together some walkthroughs for some of the problems in the quiz access assignment. Now that we're learning how important that is for people to be able to get it done in a reasonable time, so they can then do the quiz. Right? We're figuring out how the course designers set this up. And so, I hope to maybe some of those concepts that aren't done by in the peer peer presentations, maybe put together some walkthroughs in there as well. So that's something you can check. And also, like, if anybody reaches out and says, I'm just not understanding this, and I put together a little video for them, then I'll also share it to this additional study content. So over time, this will start to build and be a more valuable resource. It used to have lots. We switched books, and so starting from scratch. Lucky you get to be here when we're starting brand new with something different. Great timing on your part, I guess. Did they warn you at all? Were they like, when you signed up, was there like a little thing that was like, hey, they've completely revamped the course and the instructor's not going to have any clue?
But there were students who had said, hey, they're changing it this summer. If you can wait, you should wait.
Well, and because the old one was really bad. Okay, and so part of it is just, so right now what we're doing is each week we have this course council, which is like some of the on-campus instructors and some of the online instructors, and then they take all that feedback that you guys are supposed to do in these little survey things at the end of each week, and they get together and they take all this feedback from instructors. I sent them feedback yesterday just saying, I think you set this thing up unnecessarily complexly. So having all of these weird naming conventions for assignments is confusing to people, and having, and so they're taking all that feedback and adjusting. Just what I don't want, again, is for that to harm you and make it hard for you to be able to do your, to do well in the course, to be able to focus on the material, which is the real reason we're here, to learn to understand accounting. So usually, so the next phase of this meeting is I start with some type of general announcements and maybe things like that. And then I sort of transition into what I would call like a mini lecture, a little 10-15 minute discussion of the concepts we're going to see in the next week. Between those two things, I usually like to open the floor up for questions of a general nature. So not necessarily questions on specific homework problems. That'll come at the end. So questions about, I still don't understand where to submit this or how to do this. Anybody have any questions like that they want to throw out there that I can try to address? General complaints about how much you hate the course so far, which just send me that in an email.
One question I had was on the presentation that you're supposed, if you signed up for this first week. You had some stuff in there for like a Google meeting and some other things, but I had access to Zoom, so I'm assuming we could have used that and just recorded in Zoom and posted that. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I think that's what most people are doing. Zoom is really the easiest way to record a screen capture with an audio overlay. Sometimes I know when I try to share things from Zoom, I swear half the time it comes out with a password issue, even though I thought I had the settings right. So I often will will download the MP4 file and then upload it to YouTube. That seems to come off cleaner. But if you're a pro at getting Zoom to never be dumb, then I think it's a really great tool. I just feel like my grandmother when she used to not be able to set the clock on her VCR. Like I'm turning into that person, because I'm just like, this newfangled device doesn't work. You know, every time I'd visit grandma, I had to set the clock for her, and then the power would go out and it would just flash and flash until I came over again. So short answer, Davis R5 is yes, Zoom is a great tool for that. You're not bound by the suggestions they had.
Thank you.
And everybody feel like we're cool with when it's your turn to do a presentation, what's expected now? Because I think that wasn't super clear in for that first group.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
What was that?
I like your explanation. That kind of really helped. I mean, it had a due date and everything, so that was great.
I was going to say, if you didn't see that, to try to clarify, sorry, my little Zoom toolbar is like right in the way where I need to click. It reminds me of the Jetsons, right? Where she's exhausted because she had to push buttons all day. I'm like, I can't believe I have to move this little thing so I can click. First world problem. So in the announcements, on the homework, I put a little homework support presentations thing there, and then there's a link to this spreadsheet, or I tried to explain it. And in essence, and also this little link each week in the weekly announcement, I'll have a, like, in case you forgot, if this is your week, click here and you can pull this little document up. Anyway, so whoever's doing week 4 as an example, the week 4, what's hard about it is it's called week 4. This is what I'm talking about, these confusing naming conventions. The week 4, week 5 quiz access, chapter 2, problems 11 through 13. And so I'm just trying to tell you, here's where you're going to post it. So what we're going to do is you're going to go to the week 5 quiz access for chapter 2, which is an assignment, not the quiz. I think that's confusing as well. It's an assignment called quiz access. We're starting to figure that out. And then you're going to work out problems 11 through 13 and record your doing that. Then you're going to post that to the week 5 homework presentations chapter 2 discussion board. And you need to do that by Saturday, October 9th, because the actual quiz access is due the next Wednesday, and that will give people those few days to look at your video to help them through that. So I don't think that was explained very well, and which is why I reached out to the people who signed up to present this first week and said, hey, if you can get that thing into me even by Wednesday, like, I'll still give you. Because what's hard about the way they've set this up is I think the presentations are worth something like, I forget what it was, but it was like, it was where's that at? Smart Book Concept Video, homework support. Yeah, so these homework support presentations are worth 10% of your grade, and you only do 2 of them. Meaning if you miss one of them, that's 5%. You know, a 0 on one of those is an automatic, you know, you're down from the best you could get as 100% is now a 95%. So they've really emphasized them. I think because in the previous iteration, students were just blowing it off and saying, oh, it's not worth enough of the grade. So with it being so confusing this first week, we're trying to make a chance for people who maybe didn't understand what they were supposed to do. Other questions before I move on to more, you know, accounting specific information? All right, well, I must be so good at explaining things that nobody, it's just, you know, the pureness of my doctrine flows through my mic and into your ears, and nobody has any questions. So that's great. So I'm going to go to this little PowerPoint. So I think there's a little, what's going to be a little challenging about this chapter is, and I'm not sure why they set it up this way, but some of the, like, we haven't really learned about basic accounting entries yet. That's not till we get to do the chapter 2 information. And so in the meantime, so we're jumping into some of these concepts but we don't really know how to do the basic journal entries and things like that yet. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. And I'll try to walk you through the concepts of this chapter, and then hopefully that will be that will help you as you're trying to do the homework and the quiz. I actually, just so you know, like the publisher had like a 60 page PowerPoint deck, which seemed pretty excessive to me. And so I just went through and I looked at the homework, or sorry, the quiz access assignment, and kind of pulled those concepts that I thought you would most need to be successful at that, as I put together which of these we're going to do. So this chapter is about the basics of capital stock. So when we say capital stock, what we mean is money invested in the business by the owners of the business. So whenever you start a brand new business, if I wanted to start, like I have a storage business. If I wanted to, the first day when I was going to start that business, I literally went down to the bank, took money out of my personal account, and put money into the business's account. Okay. And so I was funding the business. I was giving the business an initial amount of money to operate with. And when I did that, I was purchasing stock or a share of ownership in the business. Because it was just my business, I was actually purchasing 100% ownership. I was purchasing all of the stock. But if there were 10 of us doing it together, we might each be getting 10% of the stock. So capital stock just means the money put into the business by the owners. In a small business, it can be a relatively small amount and a relatively small number of owners. In a large publicly traded company, it can be a much, much larger amount, millions, even billions of dollars, and thousands or even millions of potential owners. Probably some of you, whether through your retirement plan or just investments, own stock in certain companies. So that's what capital stock is. It's money contributed into the business by the owners. So a couple of concepts that are going to come up in the chapter that will be helpful to you is, first of all, there's this crazy thing called par value on stock. And when a company decides to become a corporation, they file what's called articles of incorporation with the state where they're located. And in that document, many states require them to put what's called a par value for their stock. This is like this sort of outdated thing that not every state requires, but many do. And it's arbitrary, meaning it doesn't mean anything. So if I say the par value of my stock is $1, that has zero to do with what my stock is actually going to be worth or what people are willing to pay for it at the market. But because we're structured that way, we have to account for the par value of our stock in addition to any money we receive from issuing shares over and above that par value. Okay, and so that creates some confusion. So just recognize down there below, it says there's these classes of stock. One is called par value. And I'll try to give you an example so it's less of a confusing concept. But par value is just this arbitrary amount we assign. Sometimes you'll have stock that's called no par value because the state it was incorporated in doesn't require them to put a par value. And some states call it stated value, which is in essence pretty much the same thing as par value, just some arbitrary amount that the state required you to put on the articles of incorporation. It's funny how many things we do in the world, even in the church, are because we've always done it that way, because this is the rules. One of the things I love about what President Nelson has been doing is I think he's really been looking at a lot of things we've always done a certain way and asking, do we have to do it that way, right? Is there any doctrinal reason that women can't be witnesses at baptisms? And the review said, no, there's no doctrinal reason. So let's open that up. And so I hope that the state governments will follow suit and get rid of this par value concept, but there it is. All right. So the stockholders' equity, we learned in the first chapter that assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. And stockholders and assets are pretty easy to put your finger on, like that stuff that the business owns. And liabilities is pretty easy. That's debts that the business owes. But stockholders' equity is always kind of confusing because it's just the difference between those two. And so if I have more assets than I have debts, my stockholders' equity will be higher. And if I have, more debt than I have assets, then my stockholders' equity could be, lower or negative in theory, right? And so the idea is this, that stockholders' equity comes from two different places. One place it can come from is when the business owners put money into the business, like I just described, funding my business. That's what we call common stock. Common stock is what we call paid in capital, or capital paid in by the owners into the business. The other form of stockholders' equity is what's called retained earnings. That means when the business earns money and doesn't pay it out to the owners, then we retain those earnings in the business. So that's where stockholders' equity comes from, and that's how we fund a business. We either have to put it in as owners or have the business earn money and then don't take it all out. So here's an example of what it looks like when we issue stock at par value. So our example is on June 5th, Dylan Snowboards Inc. issues 30,000 shares of $10 par value stock for $300,000. So the way we record that transaction is we haven't really learned about debits and credit entries yet, and we won't until we look at Chapter 2 stuff. But we're going to debit or increase our cash account by $300,000, and we're going to credit or increase our common stock account by $300,000. So just recognize that when we issue common stock for cash at the par value, our cash goes up and our common stock account goes up. Remembering that common stock means money put into the business by the business owners or the shareholders. But sometimes we will be issuing stock at an amount greater than its par value. This happens when the people who are buying the stock at the market think it's worth more than the par value. So now, again, we're left where we have to account for the par value of the stock and any money paid in excess of that. So in this case, on June 5th, Dylan Snowboards issues 30,000 shares of $10 par value stock for $12 per share. So when we record that transaction, we're going to say 30,000 times $12 is 36,000, or 30,000 times $12 is $360,000. And then we have to record our common stock at the par value, which was only $10 a share, is 30,000. And then our paid in capital in excess of the par value, any money we received in addition to the par value, we record separately. Let me pause here to say, I'm not a formal person. If there's something that just is really confusing you and you want to ask a question, just jump right in, like just interrupt me. There's not an easy way to I mean, you can put it in the chat if you're too nervous to say speak up, but there's not a lot of easy ways with Zoom to always make your voice heard. So if you're sitting there feeling really confused, don't be afraid to jump in with a question. All right. So this is what a little part of our balance sheet would look like after we issued that stock. It would show common stock, $10 par value, with 30,000 shares issued and outstanding is 300,000, plus the paid in capital in excess of par in the common stock, plus our retained earnings. So that gives us our total stockholders' equity of $425,000. That's what the stockholders' equity section of the balance sheet would look like after we issued that stock. And remember, issuing stock just means receiving money from owners. Okay. Sometimes it comes up that we issue stock not for cash, but instead for non-cash assets, like we exchange stock for land or we exchange stock for equipment. So in this example, they issue 4,000 shares of $20 par value stock for land that's valued at $105,000. So again, we show the asset land going up by $105,000. And if it's 4,000 shares of $20 value par value stock, then we know that means $80,000 is the par value of those 4,000 shares. So we record that. And then any value over and above that par value, we have to record separately as paid in capital in excess of par value. So we can issue stock not only for cash, but also for other assets. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that our retained earnings is the money that the business has earned. We earn money through selling stuff to people, okay? that we haven't yet paid out to the owners. So when a business pays out money to the owners, we call that a dividend. And there's a couple of ways that you can pay. You can do what's called a cash dividend. You can also do what's called a stock dividend, which we'll talk about in a second. So a cash dividend is where the business actually pays out some of its earnings to the owners. If you ever have invested in stock, you've probably gotten a dividend, or you set your dividends so that they reinvest and buy more shares of the stock. So in order to pay a dividend, a business has to have enough money in their retained earnings and the cash necessary to pay it. If you think about it, like if you stop thinking about giant corporations and think about, like, if you had your own small business, the business would earn money through operations day to day. And maybe at the end of the month, you think, I've been working hard for this business. I deserve to pull some of those profits out and treat myself, or maybe put it into my savings, or whatever I'm going to do with it. And so that idea of taking some of the profits of the business and paying it out to the owners makes common sense. Just recognize that when it's a corporation, we call that paying a dividend. Sometimes businesses pay what's called a stock dividend. So that means when a business wants to pay a dividend, the board of directors gets together and says we should pay a dividend to the shareholders, but doesn't have sufficient cash, they can instead give people shares of stock. And so it keeps the market price of the stock affordable. Usually, it's just another way of demonstrating to your shareholders, look how well we're doing. We're able to pay you a dividend. And a lot of times the shareholders really like it, right? If I have 100 shares of stock and they do a 5% stock dividend, I'll now end up with 105 shares of the stock. They differentiate between a small stock dividend, where they distribute less than 25%, less than or equal to 25% of the number of outstanding shares, and then a large, which is greater than 25%. We also have something called stock splits. Maybe you've heard of this. A stock split is something that we often use to keep the stock price in a target range. What we found is that investors often don't like to buy stock that they feel is priced too high. And so what they do with a stock split is they just split in half. If it's it's called a 2-for-1 stock split. So they split in half the price of the stock, but everybody gets issued twice as many shares. So the example we have up on there is that it's a $20 par value stock. There's 100,000 shares outstanding. After the stock split, 2-for-1, now there'll be a $10 stock with 200,000 shares outstanding. So what that means to the investor is it's worth the exact same. They have twice as many shares, but worth half the value. But new investors may look at it now and say, I'm more willing to purchase a $10 stock than I was a $20 stock. This is really awesome sometimes as an investor, because as it continues to grow, that growth is impacting twice as many shares for you. I once, when I was in Texas, I was a broker for Edward Jones Investments. And I met a lady, and I was just knocking on doors, handing out business cards. And she told me her husband once invested in stock. And I said, really, what type of stock did you guys have? And she said he bought Coca-Cola Company back in about 1950. I said, oh, that probably would have done really well for you. Did you sell it or did you keep it? And she said, oh, I still have it. And I said, oh, like you still have the actual physical stock certificate for 50 shares for 200 shares, which is what she said he bought. And she said, yeah, it's in a shoebox back in our spare bedroom. And I thought, I know Coca-Cola has had some splits since then. So like if it split 2-for-1, instead of 200 shares, she would have 400 shares. And then if it split 2-for-1 another time, her 400 shares would split to 800 shares. And I said, hey, do you mind if I do a little bit of research just to see what that investment you have sitting in your shoebox might be worth? And she said, sure, that'd be great. And we went and I pulled up all the historical splits, and it turns out that 200 shares of Coca-Cola in 1950 had split into about 17,000 shares of Coca-Cola in what year was this? About 2000. And so I multiplied that 17,000 shares by the market price, and she had about $2 million worth of Coca-Cola stock sitting in a shoebox in her back room. And so stock splits are sometimes a great thing to you We just had to hook her back up with the Coca-Cola transfer agent to get a new certificate issued with the appropriate number of shares. And then she met with a lawyer to establish a trust so that she could use that money to, she actually gave away a bunch of college scholarships to local kids. She'd been married, but they never had children, and she didn't know what to do with $2 million. I tried to apply for adoption, but she wasn't interested in adopting me. Lindsay, I see you turned your camera on. Did you have a question or a comment, or are you just, okay, just tired of sitting there in obscurity? You have to be seen.
I had stopped to eat dinner.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for not being on camera while you did that. That was nice of you. Unless it was something really delicious, and then we could have all, enjoyed the moment, I guess. So here's a little summary. This is actually something that will be pretty helpful if you want to like take a picture of it or something. On one of the problems I saw in the quiz, what's it called? Quiz access assignment. It's just a summary of what happens. So when you with each type of account, when you do each of these things. So when there's a cash dividend, it's going to decrease the total assets because you're paying out cash, and it's going to decrease the stockholders' equity overall by decreasing retained earnings. So a cash dividend, in essence, takes money out of retained earnings and pays it out in cash to the shareholders. Where a small stock dividend, when you do a dividend, a stock dividend, you're not paying out cash, so your assets don't change. Instead, what you're doing is you're increasing common stock, the contribution by the owner, while decreasing the retained earnings. In essence, you're taking retained earnings, money the business has earned, and buying more stock and then distributing that stock to the owners. Large stock dividends are always done at the par, so it'll be the same thing, but no change to the paid in capital in excess of par. And a stock split actually doesn't affect anything from the business's standpoint. There's no assets paid out, no debt taken on, and the common stock you didn't purchase new stock, you just split the price in half and double the number of shares outstanding. So this is actually a pretty good little summary. There'll be a problem that will use that. Just a few more here. I'll try to get through this quickly. There's another concept which is called preferred stock that they're going to bring up. So preferred stock is different than the common stock that you and I can buy if we go on our Robinhood account or something. So preferred stock is a special type of stock that is issued usually to, we'll just say like high-level investors in the company and people who are serving like on the board of directors or other people who are close to the company. So preferred stock is different. And the reason it's called preferred is because preferred stock will get paid its dividends before common stock will. Where it's not preferred is common stock gives you a vote. Each share of stock you have lets you vote for who the board of directors and things like that for the company are. Preferred stock doesn't give voting rights. So it looks a lot like when we issue common stock, or when we issue it, the business's cash will go up, and then its preferred stock will go up. In the same way, if it has a par value, it'll go up by the par value, and any money we receive in addition to that will be in excess of par. So just recognize there's another type of stock called preferred stock, but the way we record the issuance of it is very similar to common stock. So here's reasons companies issue preferred stock. It helps them raise money, but they don't have to give up voting rights. So, and it appeals to certain types of investors. Some people think common stock is too risky. Preferred stock pays more steady dividends out than common stock does. This is just a concept that will come up in one of the problems. There's two types of preferred stock. One is called cumulative preferred stock, and the other is called non-cumulative preferred stock. Cumulative preferred stock is preferred stock that guarantees dividends. So even if the company loses money one year and can't pay dividends that year, then the next year, before any of the common stockholders can get dividends, the preferred shareholders will have to get their dividends from the previous year. Those are called dividends in arrears from previous years, and their dividends for this year before the common stockholder can get anything. And so that's just the definition of, that'd be one of those, if I was doing an assignment and I forgot what that definition was, I'd go to that summary of terms at the end of the chapter and look it up. Non-cumulative stock doesn't prefer that or doesn't guarantee the dividends. That's the big difference. All right, one more concept here. Well, not one more. Another concept here is treasury stock. So sometimes after a business has issued stock to stockholders, remember we usually issue stock because we're trying to raise money, right? Like if I'm trying to take my business to the next level and I don't have $1 billion to do that, I might sell off a portion of my business to other shareholders and then use that money to grow the business. Sometimes a business grows to the point where you're ready to sort of buy stock back, okay? Saying, I don't need all of that stock out there. Now we're doing well financially. And so they'll buy stock back in that's already been issued. When we do that, it becomes treasury stock. It means the stock of the business that's already been issued, but has been bought back into the business and held in the business's treasury. Okay, that's why they call it treasury stock. And a lot of times we use it. Well, this has the examples up here. I said number 3 is a really common reason. If you ever have participated like in an employee stock ownership program, usually what you're doing is you're buying stock from the company's treasury stock. Again, all it means is stock that has been sold and is out there for sale on the secondary market that the company buys back in its own stock. Let's see. They want you to know how to calculate earnings per share, price to earnings ratio, and dividend yield. I'll show you those formulas. Earnings per share is just our net income. That was from our income statement, our revenue minus our expenses, minus any preferred dividends, divided by the weighted average common shares outstanding. So that's the formula for it. Often they will give you this number, weighted average common shares outstanding. If they don't, then it's a little tougher. What you have to do is figure out how many shares were outstanding at the beginning of the year, plus the number that were outstanding at the end of the year, and then divide that by 2. And that will tell you what the average number of shares outstanding for the year were. What this tells us is if you think about it, it's earnings, which is our profit or net income per share. And so, if you ever go to Yahoo Finance and look up, one of the things it always shows is EPS. And that's saying this company made this much profit per share outstanding. And that can be really helpful if you're trying to compare a couple of similar companies. Price to earnings ratio is just the market price of the stock. Again, if you're looking for a publicly traded company, you can go to Yahoo Finance or MSN Finance or several others. And you just take that market price divided by the earnings per share. And that gives you what's called the price to earnings ratio, or the price divided by the earnings. Again, this gives us a measure of relative to the earnings per share, at what level is this stock trading on the market? Okay, so it compares those two concepts. I recognize, I really feel like we're dumping this stuff on you guys early. In other words, I prefer for it to be in chapter 12 near the end of the course. And so I don't think that you have to be an expert in price to earnings ratio to get through this chapter, but you may have to be able to apply the formula, right? Like and recognize a little bit about what it means, and recognize that as you go through more of this, it'll become clearer. That's what's hard, right? I feel like in some ways, the way the course is set up, where you should still be playing chopsticks, but we're jumping ahead to maybe not like some symphony or concerto or something, but we are jumping ahead to say like one of the hymns made easy hymns, and it takes a little bit of work to get to that. And then finally, dividend yield, which is just going to be the annual cash dividends per share divided by the market value per share. Again, with some context, I think this will not be too bad. It'll be doable. So that's the end of my little presentation. Anybody have any questions about things I mentioned in the presentation that you might want clarified? I know a lot of it you don't have a lot of context for, and so it's hard to ask a question about it until you get into it, right? And then the questions come up. But any questions on this?
Hey, Brother Fox, a quick question.
Sure.
With the equations and things like the 3 or 4 that we're talked about tonight and in this week's material. Like with the quizzes and things we do, there's still like the book you can pull up that gives a link to, help with this question. But as far as like when we do the exams, like we have one coming up in a couple weeks, will we need to know these equations, like have them memorized to know what they are?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And so the short answer is I know that the exams are closed book. I don't know yet what all content is on them. A group of us instructors are kind of working together to build a study guide for the exam because we feel like we don't want you guys just left completely with it dumped on you. And so I guess the short answer is you probably will have to know a lot of like how to calculate these things, but I won't know for sure until I can get a good review on that exam. And like I said, last week has been so full of putting out fires, I haven't got to look ahead very much. But yeah, it's been a frustration of students each time that the exams are closed book with no notes or anything.
Gotcha. Thanks. So yeah, study guide at least will be good. So
Yeah,
keep an eye out for that.
We're working on it. We'll try to get it out, with at least several days before the exam, so you have time to look at it. Other questions I can dodge, like that one. I'll assume somebody laughed at that, but everybody's on mute, so I don't know. Or maybe it's not funny at all to dodge somebody's question when you don't have an answer. Anyway, so all right, so if I see something in the chat, let me check that out. Oh, thanks, Sarah. So the last phase of this kind of class meeting is to see if anybody has any like homework problem that they specifically want to, have me look at or kind of do a little walkthrough or talk through of. When we get to this stage, it's not, I don't think it's rude at all if there's people who are like, hey, I'm good, and just they want to check out, or if people want to hang out and say, well, maybe what he's working through with this specific student could help me too. So just recognize that I will never judge someone who bails in a meeting because I figure you probably have something else you got to get to. I got 8 kids, okay, so I know there's always something else to get to. Good news is most of them are gone. Some people are like, I never wanted my kids to leave, and I'm like, no, I'm kind of enjoying how quiet it is with only 2 left at home. If the grandkids come visit, then it's loud again.
I did have a question.
Okay.
I think it was from the quiz access,
Okay.
and I believe it was problem 11. It totally stumped me, and I know it was probably something easy, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And I put it in that area where we're supposed to kind of, I forget what that's called. I don't remember all the names of every assignment, but where we're supposed to kind of ask the class members. 2 or 3 other people said, yeah, that one stumped them too. So
yeah, and I actually I saw it. So here's one of the problems with this course setup is did you put it, is it in the class, or are you talking about that like tutoring discussion board thing that's outside of the class?
it is, let me see what this is called. Hold on.
Is it called Inscribe?
Yeah, is it Inscribe?
No, that doesn't sound right. It's called support forum for the quiz access.
Okay. And I didn't even, let's see. So I actually made a video of it and put it in Inscribe, and then I just saw an email today, someone saying, and I did the video in Zoom, and it's saying it's got some kind of password issue and nobody can see it. So that was a bunch of work that didn't help anyone.
Okay, what's Inscribe? I guess I don't know what that is.
I think you access Inscribe. Let me share my screen again. I think it's over here under tutoring resources. I'm not sure about that. Let me see.
I just started getting emails for them. I don't know.
So when you click on tutoring resources, it takes you to this, which is Inscribe. Maybe that's another one of the things I should have showed. And you can see right here, like Tia says, I'm stumped on question 11. And so then, so there's responses, and then like different, like Sister Call, she's another one of the instructors. She shared some stuff that walked through it. And then like I shared a video, but apparently the video doesn't work. So this is I really think on the last iteration of this course, they kind of did away with the whole discussion boards in the course, because this Inscribe lets people from all of the courses, there's there's probably 20 sections of accounting going on with BYUI right now. And so it just opened it up to, broader discussion, and multiple instructors could also respond in there. But anyway, so let's take a look at that one real quick.
Yeah, this is great too. Thank you for showing me this. I didn't even realize that was there.
Let's see. So we're looking at quiz access. Oh wait, that's the discussion. That's the support forum. And look at all those people talking in there that I didn't even realize was happening. So awesome. I will try to look at that. Although the way they have it set up is it's like, no, we want students helping students. So I guess if you want broader help, it's going out to that other one. I don't know. We'll have to figure, again, this is something we'll work through and try to figure out the best way to help everybody succeed. All right, quiz access, chapters 1 and 12. Mine's going to look a little different because I'm in like an instructor view. So it will show like the answers already and stuff. Oh, what the heck? Why did it do that?
I think it opened up in another tab.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
I
I think I have the same question too. It's
Okay.
number 11. I was really confused.
So like
Yeah, I kept looking for the formula for net income.
I think that was the same one. Yep.
all right. So here it
Net
is.
income using accounting equation.
Yeah, so it is a little bit confusing. I'm going to bring up an Excel spreadsheet and try to kind of walk you through what my process would be to solve this and see if
Thank
it's
you.
helpful at all. So I'm going to do this and this. All right. And I'll try to make this a
Will
little
we
bigger.
be able to use Excel when we're doing the exam?
Yes,
Okay.
because it would be dumb if you couldn't, because it's a standard in accounting, right?
It
It's
is.
I love Excel 97% as much as I love my wife. Like, and I love her a lot. So like it's not as much, but it's approaching, because Excel gives me consistent outputs as long as I give consistent inputs. And that doesn't always happen in all of my relationships. It'd be so nice if, like, back when you were dating, like as a kid, if you could have had some way of, you're thinking of going in for the kiss and you could just pull up an Excel spreadsheet and put in some good input and be like, now's the time. But it didn't work that way. Anyway, so right here I have the Shep Company's records. They give me total assets and total liabilities. And they give me them at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. So I'm going to say beginning, end. So 52,400 and 83,000. And then my total liabilities, 23,200 and 36,200. And so I know that assets equal liabilities plus equity. So with this information, I can calculate my equity. Okay, so I can just do, if assets equal liabilities plus equity, then assets minus liabilities equal equity. So there's my first step, is to figure out my equity at the beginning and the end of the year. Because I also have to know that equity, stockholders' equity, equals my common stock plus my retained earnings. And my retained earnings comes from my net income minus my dividends. So that's something that it's asking you to make this whole leap, okay, which I think is a big leap. And so again, so if I just say equity equals common stock plus net income minus dividends. So now that I know my equity change, okay, I can kind of do this function, okay? So it tells me, so if I'm going to say, so this is going to be my change in equity, okay? So if I just take my equity at the beginning of the year minus the end of the year minus my equity at the end of the year, that's going to tell me how much equity changed during the year. And then my common stock on this first one, it says additional common stock of 4,200 was issued. So my common stock goes up by 4,200.
That's another one.
Dividends of 8,200 were paid. And I'm supposed to figure out, well, what was the net income that year? So now I'm down to basic algebra, right? I just have to solve for net income. So if I say, well, this is going to equal my equity minus my common stock and plus my dividends, that's how much my net income was. Did that make sense, or was it just more confusion?
No, that made a lot of sense.
So let me do the other two just as another example. So again, equity, we're always going to start with the same number, which is the change in equity from the last year, so 17,600. And then this one tells me additional common stock of 15,300 was issued. No dividends. So what was my net income, right? So again, if I'm solving for net income, I would just say this equals my equity minus my common stock plus my dividend, which was 0. And that's going to give me 2,300.
So you're reversing the signs then from what it
Yeah.
shows on the page.
Yeah, because I'm solving for it algebraically, right? I'm trying to
Yeah.
get, so I mean, maybe it would be easier if because I could recast the whole thing and just put net income on one side,
Yeah.
which,
I think that's where I was having my problem because I think I got to that equation, but I couldn't figure out why my answer wasn't becoming right. So it's like, okay.
That's exactly what I did too, Jessica. Is that you, Jessica?
And I was like,
so
okay.
that would be reframing the whole equation, right?
Yeah.
So now in
Okay,
terms of
yes.
net income equals these.
Okay.
And so so like the last one, I could do the same thing, 17,600. It says no additional common stock was issued. Dividends of 13,200 were paid. Oh, whoops, I mean, no common stock. Dividends of 13,200. So my net income is that minus that plus that.
Okay.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I told you I love Excel. It makes me
Well,
happy.
My brain was hurting by the end. I didn't think to use Excel. I don't know why. I guess I was thinking pen and paper, pencil and paper. But and so I finally was like, you know what? It's not worth that many points. I just give up.
Well, but what's hard about this quiz access, we're having this discussion in our instructor forum, is, the quiz access aren't worth all the points in the world, but if you don't get at least 90% on it, then you can't take the quiz. And then it really kind of starts to double penalize students. And so I know they're taking a look at maybe dropping the threshold, from say 90% down to 70% or something like that. Because some students just time-wise are willing, sometimes you're willing to take the hit so you can deal with the other things you have in life. But these are all things we're trying to improve or fix in the course. I like the idea that last year or in the previous versions of the course, people were really getting beat up by quizzes. So they want to make sure you're prepared for them. But sometimes limiting you makes it hard for you to get all your work done too.
Well, and I do appreciate that. It's like a little study guide, but I feel like the quiz itself was a little easier. It didn't quite have, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I felt like that was easier. So.
Yeah. Other questions about specific problems, or our brains pretty full and I always find at about an hour, I stop thinking. So, but I'm more than happy to look at it. Really, it just happens to me. I just zone out on meetings. Unfortunately, it happens to me when I'm like officiating soccer matches too. And an hour in, I'm just not thinking anymore. And so, sorry guys, did the best I could.
Okay.
Are we good? Any other questions? So my intent is to hold. Okay, my intent is to hold this meeting weekly. My schedule is unusually busy right now, and so we may have to adjust on occasion. And I'm sorry for that in advance, but I don't have a single evening that is consistently free. But Thursday's my best bet. So that's why we're doing it at this time, for now at least. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns before we have a closing prayer? Hearing none. Do we have a volunteer for a closing prayer? Hearing none, I guess that makes it me. So I'll offer that. Our dear Father in heaven, we love thee and we are grateful for this opportunity that we had to meet together tonight. We're grateful for the blessings of the gospel of Jesus Christ, grateful for the peace it brings in tumultuous times. Father, we ask for thy Spirit to be with us as a class, that we can strengthen one another, that we can learn the material that we need to learn, and that we can be better prepared to serve in the church and in the world. Father, we're grateful again for this opportunity we've had to meet, and grateful for thy Spirit and the guidance it provides to us. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You.